So hi everyone, if you are joining us, thank you so much again for doing so. Please forgive the pause in our regular podcast updates. We've been so super busy, which is a great problem to have, but it's just meant we've not been able to bring in more wonderful guests. So forgive the slight pause. For those who don't know me, my name is Sarah Simcoe. I'm a director at DMS Wirral Limited. I also founder of EMBED, which is a consortium of cross-sector EDI experts and passionate drum bangers, I would say. So today's podcast, we've got a fantastic guest joining us. But before we go to him, I just want to remind you about Becky Morris as well. Becky's been a regular fixture out on the EMBED podcast circuit, Becky. So welcome, thank you so much for joining us again. If you would just like to remind people who you are out there.
Absolutely. So I'm Becky Morris. I'm the director of the Disability Collaborative Network, which is in culture and heritage, and we support inclusive practice, intersectional inclusive practice in the service provision, working practice and workforce in culture and heritage. And I'm also very proud to say I'm an associate consultant in respect to EMBED.
I'm so thrilled. That's one of the reasons we've been so goddamn busy. I feel like the heritage cultural art space, I know far more about it than I thought I did before, and I'm a history geek. But anyway, joining us today, I'm also absolutely thrilled to welcome Gavin Neate. So thank you so much for joining us. I've been a follower of yours in the Twitter sphere for quite a while now, a number of years, Gavin, and I've always been so excited about the conversations that you've generated on Twitter, as well as your spots on Access Chat and all of those amazing conversations out there. So thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm going to excuse myself by taking my glasses off because they're steaming up already. It must be the excitement, but I can't see you anymore, but I know you're there, but my glasses were steaming up. So we were the three amigos there because we all had really nice black glasses on, but I've broken the threesome up there, and we're all separate.
Fantastic.
But I was steaming up.
Break away from the pack. Fine. So thank you so much for joining us. Are you well?
I am well. I'm a very happy bunny. I moved house recently I went from Edinburgh to Glasgow, and with that meant that I was spending the same amount of money to actually get a really nice flat, whereas in Edinburgh it was a small place where I didn't even have anywhere I could go outside, whereas here I can walk outside and my house just feels like if I'm working from home, this is the nicest environment I could possibly have. So I am incredibly well mentally, and I've never been busier in my entire life, but I love it. I just love it. Working from home, I get to speak to everybody. I have meetings like this. I can chat to my colleagues who are in different parts of the country. And so, everything is A-okay.
Fantastic. And it really does that. We're in unprecedented times right now, and there are so many lessons that we've learned, some pretty tragic, but also for me, there have been so many silver linings coming through, and being able to demonstrate the wonderful world of tech and how that technical innovation can really help when it comes to accessibility and inclusion out there in society, for me, has been one of those big spotlight on a sweet moment of a conversation. So could you just tell the listeners who you are, what you do, where you're from?
Yeah, no, absolute pleasure to. Actually, when you were saying something there, it just suddenly struck me. After the Second World War, we had the advent of the NHS. And you need something like that to happen in order to really progress. And you can talk about wars, and you can say, well, medicine, prosthetics have improved dramatically because of the dreadful things that happened in Iraq and Afghanistan and stuff like that. But they only happen if people come along and actually actively change things. And I think that's a massive thing to take away from this is we can sit back and go, now's the time that these things should be happening, and we can expect other people to do them, or we can be actively involved in making sure that those things happen. And I think we as advocates, we as active people need to lead the way. And I'm hoping well, I had a bit of a run up before I started, before we had COVID-19 came along. I had a bit of a run up because I worked for Guide Dogs for the Blind for 18 years. I was heavily involved in mobility training for people who needed independent mobility through their guide dogs and long canes. And then increasingly people with wheelchairs who even applied for guide dogs as well. But during that time, I was also around from 96 when I joined Guide Dogs until 2015 when I left. Well, during that time, we had the advent of truly accessible personal technology. So smartphones, 2006, the advent of iPhone voiceover. I think then it was iPhone 2S. But before that, even then we had Nokia N95s, which had the last decent Nokia phone, I say. But you had to pay £180 to have the speech software added onto your phone. Whereas iPhone came along and went, no, it's all free. You get voiceover, and now Samsung and Android have TalkBack. But I was there in Guide Dogs from 96 with the first 100 Pentium computer. And then my clients would keep turning up and they would have more and more kit. And then I started talking about kit, and I would talk about how the kit was affecting their lives, and they would introduce kit to other people on the class. And I would just taking all these notes and learning so much from them, which was a massive change in the world of charity and disability and accessibility. Was that the able, and I use that in inverted commas 100%, the able were then being educated by the disabled, who had now been enabled by this amazing tech. So the whole the balance of power in my mind had changed. I was learning from my clients. Now, with the best will in the world, charity has not been that. Charity has been, we give you a service. You can be thankful or not thankful, but we're here for you. And in the worst case scenario, you can be beholden to us. And I think that happened far too often. And even if the charity didn't demand that, the person still felt it. Yeah. And that created a world where the disabled person was beholden to somebody else, more than likely somebody who was able-bodied, again, in inverted commas. And the balance of power was wrong. But then everything changed. Social media, technology, we look at all the amazing, look at the Disability Power 100, Shaw's Disability Power 100 list. The disabled people that are moving and grooving, they are shaking the world from the very core, if that's not a mixed metaphor, but they're demanding. And that is what's driving the change. And I feel, when I was in Guide Dogs, I felt like I was Lewis Hamilton's pit crew. I was the guy who changed the tire and sent the person out. Yeah. I wasn't Lewis Hamilton and giving somebody a job so they could change my tire. I was actually the person who helped to liberate the person who went out there and had a mobility with the dog. So that led me to all the solutions that I then eventually came up with. And I don't know if that's answered your question. It probably hasn't. I've rambled.
Oh, no, it absolutely did. And the really interesting point of it, and it's absolutely something we wholeheartedly keep at the core of EMBED, is listening to the voice of the disabled person, listening to the voice of the lived experience, and allowing that to take us to the place where real innovation that's going to be a change maker, that's going to shift culture, because it's something that we know is going to work, because the people that are telling us they're going to use it are the ones that are telling us how to make it, right?
It's true. I think that can evolve.
Absolutely.
By saying listen to the people who have the lived experience, what we do is we get to a stage in development of an innovation and we say, right, now I'm going to talk to that person, or I'm going to talk to the disabled person. I'm going to involve them in it in some way. But that feels wrong. If they are a part of it, if they are the CEO or the C-level management within that organization, if they've come up with the idea, or if they're involved in it as staff members, if the company itself represents society, then 20% of your company has already got lived experience of something. And the other thing I would add to that, this is not just about involving the disabled person. It is about involving the person who observes. So if you were looking at, I think the best example I've ever come up with this award on a hospital. Now you can ask the patient at the end of their term in the hospital how better the ward could be run. But step back and think about that and think, well, who else knows how the ward could be better run? It's the nurse. It's the staff nurse. It's the person who's actually living that every day as a practitioner. Yeah. And I think the practitioners, and I'm a practitioner, I think we leave the practitioners, we don't look for the ones with a twinkle in their eye who have seen something and go, do you know what, I've seen 1,000 people and I've seen their lived experience and I've got input as well. So we need to get away, I think, from giving the businesses a cop-out that as long as you ask a disabled person, you'll know what to do. Employ the disabled person and ask the people around them who are involved. So let's have a universal design that isn't just about the end product being useful to everybody, but universal design in the actual design process itself, not just asking them, but employing them, and hell, them employing us. And that's how I
well, I think I absolutely agree, because lived experience for me is not necessarily a direct personal experience of disability. Lived experience for me could be you're somebody close to somebody that you see using an environment, or to your point, you're a nurse or a doctor or a factory worker, and you watch the process that's not wholly accessible, or producing something that's not wholly accessible. I think for me, the lived experience is those people with that view, that experience of what that feels like to go through that process or that product or that practice. And to your point, bringing those voices in, I think is so important. With that in mind, then, when you created Neatebox, what was the initial vision that you had for the organisation? Because I know you're so passionate about engaging people and being representative and ensuring that we're listening to what's going to work. So where did that take you in terms of vision?
You beautifully led me into a prop. I have a prop with me now. I will describe it to anybody who's visually impaired or blind or visually impaired, but this is a book. Okay, now it's not a published book, but it's a book of those photographs that you can put together. And back in 2007, I started, maybe even before, I started taking photographs of badly installed pedestrian crossings. Okay.
Oh, yes.
This is a picture of me in Musselburgh, and in the background to me slightly, and I'm pointing to him, is a gentleman called Murray and his guide dog, and they are standing at a down curb and they're waiting to cross the road. But there is a good 8 foot, maybe even 9 foot between Murray and the button he's supposed to press before he crosses the road. And there's absolutely no way that Murray is going to be able to get to that button. It was very obvious to me at the time, with all my clients turning up with mobile phones. Well, Murray's in the right place to cross the road from. Why should he then go looking for a button that takes him away from the correct place to cross the road? So I just thought, well, wouldn't it be good if the mobile phone pressed the button for Murray? And wouldn't it be good if in some way the mobile phone personalised the pedestrian crossing so that Murray would have a crossing that was designed for him and his needs? And inside this book is just photograph upon photograph of all the crossings that I ever came into contact with around the country where the person couldn't press the button. And the more I looked at it, the more I realized, and here's a photograph of Philip, who is in a power chair in the middle of a double crossing, dual carriageway crossing, and he can't press the button. And he got to the middle of that crossing and then couldn't cross the rest of the way until somebody came and pressed the button, or he just thought, oh, it looks like it's clear. Now, one thing that I knew as a mobility instructor is if you're approaching a pedestrian crossing, you're looking at the lights, not at who's standing at the crossing. If the lights are on green, you keep going. You probably don't even slow down. You might get to that crossing at 30 miles an hour. And at that point, Philip is going, well, I can't reach the button. I'm just going to have to go for it. We're actually promoting crossing in a more dangerous environment because we're saying go when the person needs you to stop. So I just thought, well, this is a universal design. This is something that so many people who have a mobility impairment can't interact. So I was going to solve a problem for everybody. So I designed I got other people to design some hardware that went into the pedestrian crossing. I've actually got one in the corner of my room over here. I should have showed it to you. And the phone just runs an app. They get close to the crossing. They wait for a couple of seconds and the phone presses the button. And there'll be a link somewhere later on, and it will show you the most amazing video of 2 young men crossing a road for the first time, both of them in power chairs, both of them using their mobile phones to press the button at the crossing. And it was just a moment where you just go, yes! When you realize you've invented something, and we're the world's first. Nobody had ever done this by 2011 when I did it. And I was still working for guide dogs at that point. I realized there was the world's first personalised pedestrian crossing in the world. And
out of such a simple idea comes something that's so hugely freeing for people. Because ultimately that's what, when we're talking about accessibility and we're talking about inclusion, it's freeing people to enjoy every experience. So out of that, just such a simple, innovative but simple idea, out has grown a wonderful.
The 2 guys in that, sorry Becky, the 2 guys in that video Both play one plays power chair football. They're both in an orchestra. One is, he was the captain of Lothian Wolves power chair football team. They've both got degrees. One's got a degree in chemistry and one's got degrees in physics. And they can't cross a road on their own. Mm. They need somebody to come up and think, oh, I'll press the button for you. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah. I'll get back to doing my degree or playing power chair football for Scotland now. Thanks for pressing the button. That's craziness. Sorry, Becky, I interrupted.
No, I was just thinking of the practicality as well in terms of that innovative product, because we're not asking people to completely redesign something that already exists. This is actually about saying there's a barrier there and we're going to meet that challenge through providing a solution. And like you say, give people the independence that they need and should have. And so what I like about it the most is that idea about that practical solution-based action through innovation and using technology and making it something which is affordable and cost-effective in regards to any particular financial challenges that people and local authorities, you name it, have at the moment.
Well, and the app for us is totally free. This is a massive part of everything I do, as I didn't want to put a tax on somebody's disability or condition or whatever. I didn't want to tax that. So we said, here's a free app. When you get to one of our crossings, the council may have installed this stuff in it, which it's 15 minutes to install it. It's like that, and it doesn't cost much. So we say, when you get to that crossing, and if there's a band around it that says Neatebox compliant or button compliant, then you can cross using your phone. However, if it's not in there, you can request it. You go into the app and you say, dear council, and then they know when they've got people saying, we want this. And that's a massive part of this. We always say, sign this petition, write to your MSP, your MP or whatever, talk to the charity does this, the charity does that. We're cutting out all of that stuff. And we're saying, you want it, you tell us, tell your council, we will tell them about it and we will install it. And the same thing worked for Welcome, which we'll talk about a bit later.
Yeah, I mean, Beck, you and I do, one of the things that we do quite a lot of in EMBED is auditing. So whether that's access auditing of the built environment, or whether that's the digital environment, or whether it's policy and process, we do that across sectors. And the biggest challenges that we see end up coming from those smallest moments like you mentioned. It's those moments where somebody just hasn't considered that small part of the puzzle. And when you then start offering practical solutions, you see the light bulbs going off around what that could actually mean to someone's experience. We see that. You're renowned for pedestrian crossings, is where you started with Neatebox. Becky's called the Loo Lady.
I'll take mine.
True story.
True. Becky's called the Loo Lady, and it is often, I've seen it from Becky as well, with those small pieces of practical advice that really just help turn a situation on its head. Is so empowering for people.
And also, it moves things forward.
Absolutely does. Yeah, absolutely does. Sorry, Gavin, your nickname being?
I was, for many years, I was Guide Dog Gav. But it's now turned into Buzz, as if Buzz Lightyear, because I'm an activist. Buzz Lightyear is very much an activist, and I'm likely to run into a room without thinking about the eventuality of running into that room, because I'm desperate to do stuff. But when it comes to business, being able to do stuff quickly and just with gut can be incredibly useful. It sometimes means you have to clean a lot up afterwards, and I've surrounded myself with other members of the Toy Story team in order to do that. So you need a Woody. Everybody needs a Woody, and we've got a Woody in our company who makes sure that whatever Gavin does, he's there to clean up, or hopefully even lay down that carpet before I run through the door. So yeah, you need that.
Becky might be my Woody.
Well, you're the Buzz Lightyear and Becky's. We need everybody. Yeah, we all need a Sleepy, Mr. Potato Head. We've got all those people.
I tell you what, though, what I love is like that situation where you get so much energy, where you just see people just go, whoa, like that, in terms of going forward. Yeah. And that kind of excitement, go, we can do something about this. And they're like, really? It's a great way of getting people involved.
Yeah.
And the key word there is do.
Absolutely.
The word isn't, let's do a white paper. Let's think about. Let's look at this stuff. Let's do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can make sure that we always involve the doers. If we don't have doers, then it's never going to get done. And we can't just keep going through a political cycle every 2 years or whatever of saying, let's do a study, let's do a study, let's do a study. How many times do we see those studies? All the charities do this. You get another study. We've decided we're going to do a study into what your problems are. So we're going to ask you what your problems are. And eventually you go, right, what are you doing with this study? Well, it's going to lead to us taking it to the government to tell them, the government, that we've got a problem with this. The government go, our job isn't to find solutions. Our job is to say we need solutions. So unless we actually have people creating solutions, and that has to be private business.
Absolutely.
But private business has always charged the disabled person money for the solution. So there had to be a new model. Our model was you charge the council to install the stuff, the person gets it for free. With Welcome, you charge the business that you're installed with, and they make money out of more people coming through the door. So you have to have a sustainable business model, otherwise you have no future. But you also have to understand the route to getting it fixed. And that isn't always just doing the signing petitions. You have to have an end result to that.
Yeah, I think for me, there's a lot to be said about what we can learn from each other from across sectors, and also those key collaborative opportunities to actually share and develop what is keeping somebody awake at night in how they're going to tackle this, to actually somebody to say, actually, I've been working on the answer, and seeing that collaboration come together to create real positive action, and also supporting everybody in respect to that solution as well.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I absolutely agree, Beck. And I think what we've noticed as well, I'm a huge fan of Neatebox, and when we're working with our EMBED clients and we're giving them advice on other organisations that can help them, Neatebox is in our toolkit bag. It's one of the organisations. We get no commission, folks. Just before you mention anything,
we give no for commission.
But offering up signposting to organisations that can really help them make a difference. And for me, that's been Neatebox. It's been one of those solutions for people where they can really easily engage and see the art of the possible in a really simple, effective way, with a cost model, to your point, that is not going to break the bank. It feels palatable, but they're focusing in on really elevating their organisation. So we focus in that space on visitor attractions and how to encourage people to come into the organisation, and then they're mindful of what's that experience going to feel like for them. So I know Neatebox has a whole raft of offerings. One of the ones that we are certainly fans of at EMBED, and you've already mentioned it, is Welcome, the Welcome app. So if you could just share a little bit about this wonderful little app. It's amazing.
Oh, big fans, and I'm a big fan of it, and I came up with the idea, which is just I truly love it. When you sell something that you love, and I say sell, I mean it sells itself. I don't have to. I'll explain it. So when I was a mobility instructor, I would walk into shops, but my job was to stand back at a distance and observe how people interact with my client and how my client interacted with them. And there was real inconsistency. And the reason for that was because it's very hard to make sure that your staff are trained to a particular level all the time. Now, it's very easy for one charity to say, I'm not down on charities, I love charities, but because they do great work. But it's very easy for one charity to say, yeah, we went into Tesco and we trained their staff on how to give sighted guide. Or we did a week of training on autism, and all their staff members, or at least 50% of their staff members now know about autism. But if you're looking at this from the point of view of all staff knowing all information about all people who are going to come through the door, there's no traditional training method in the world that is going to ensure that that is available. So all we did, to cut a long story short, all we did was tie the mobile phone to a proximity to the building. So when the person was about 300 meters from the building, a message went to the customer service team to say, I am coming through the door. This is what I look like, and this is how best you can serve me. This is how best you can interact with me. This is how you can interact with me in a way that makes me feel important, but in a way that makes you feel that you've done a good job. And we'll put it in brackets here, that makes you feel that you want to continue to do that job. If you look at seasonal work, and museums and art galleries is probably very seasonal to a certain extent, and certainly hospitality and a lot of tourism, these are all areas where it's seasonal. You're probably having to train a new set of people every single year. And the reason for that is because they don't see a future necessarily in customer service. And one of those reasons is because it is a thankless task. But if we can put information in the hands of the person, now, if you know that the next person who comes through the door has a prosthetic right hand, and you know that that person has dared you, has said, you might never have met me before, or you might have met me before, but we weren't able to do it, but how do you fancy shaking my right hand? Now, I'm not saying we do that in the app, but somebody could actually create that message and tempt somebody to do this. Now, when I've done it, when I've shaken somebody's right hand with my right hand and theirs is a prosthetic limb, I've walked away with goosebumps. And they haven't been upset, they've wanted it. But I've gone, that was amazing. And I've been approached by members of staff who use Welcome, and they say, I was nervous to start with because I was suddenly in an area where I wasn't necessarily, I always thought I was doing it right, but there's unconscious competence or incompetence. But now they were in conscious competence and they really had to think. But afterwards they were buzzing. They were so happy about the service they had provided. And I think that's what we have to do when we come up with any solution, is we don't have to just solve it for the disabled person, which is what we are doing, but also make sure that we are solving the problem that is experienced by the people that are meeting them or providing a service for them. Because it's that whole solution, that's universal design, not just universally everybody can use it, but the people who are providing it are getting something from it. And that with Welcome, because it's a free app, we realized we had to charge the business, but we charged the business such a small amount of money that two people walking through the door and buying, let's say a coffee shop, buying 2 coffees and 2 Danish pastries will pay for the service for an entire month. Which means that every other person who comes through that door gets better service, virtually for free, and spends money and wants to come back again. So that's Welcome. It's customer service based on your proximity to a building. It's called Welcome by Neatebox. And just the last thing, the Welcome. If you spell out Welcome, the last 2 letters of Welcome are me. And we've changed them on our logo into a different type. So the me stands out. It's Welcome Me. Because I'm your customer, I need to be welcomed, and I'm important because I'm spending money in your venue.
I actually had a conversation with somebody about Welcome this morning, and it was on the back of doing an audit consultancy piece of work for them. So they'd already had an audit, and they needed fresh views actually to help them with some practical action planning. Audits can be scary, so they needed it breaking down a bit. And one of the areas that they were struggling with was how to ensure people can seek support when within the space it's not really easy for them to seek it. You know, it was in the middle of a town centre, it was a retail area, the intercoms were too high and the doors weren't opening in the right way, and it was really difficult to find certain places within the location. So we kind of had a conversation. They said, oh, and they were getting themselves really tied up in knots about wanting to create a shopping experience that anyone can enjoy, and they were really getting worried about some feedback that they'd had. And we started talking about Welcome, and they were kind of going, so I could actually ask for information from someone. Yes, it's like them ringing or them emailing, except when you use the app, they're able to give it more context.
It's so simple.
Oh my God, that's going to cost me a fortune. No,
maybe as little as £30 a month. But if you're a charity, you get it for £1 a month. So a charity that has a building, we put it in there for £1 a month as a nominal fee. But people can then go and practice that before they then go somewhere else. But believe me, it doesn't really need much practice. It's incredibly intuitive.
Oh, it's very intuitive. I've seen the app. It's really intuitive. When I broke it down, and you offer them solutions like that, they hadn't even been aware that there was something out there like that. Light bulbs were on. They were very excited about what they could do on the back of this. And to your point, it was lovely seeing the organisation feeling like they were taking more control of offering that inclusive experience, as well as knowing the visitor is going to feel that they're being included in the experience. So it was a fascinating conversation. Hopefully they get in touch.
Well, and I think this is the problem, is a lot of people think tech will be really complex. Everything we do is not complex, but we understand that's a barrier. And also we have a lot of people, I spoke with Sophie Morgan. I've known Sophie Morgan for a couple of years now. And Sophie Morgan, Googler, she's amazing, but does a lot of work with Channel 4 and is incredibly, is an amazing advocate. But Sophie had been saying to me for a year and a half, maybe 2 years, she said, your stuff's amazing. And then back in January, I said, Sophie, it's about time you saw it working. And Sophie looked at it and went, oh.
It really is.
That's a game changer. And she's been an even bigger fan. But I think, don't just think about it as being useful. Make the connection, engage. Because I promise you, this is easier than even you think it is right now with believing that I say it's easy. It's so simple. We could set somebody up in 24 hours. It's that simple.
I think one of the things that I love about it as well, in addition to all the other comments, is about the diversity of disability and also the diversity in neurodiversity, and the idea that somebody may have aphasia, they may have a stammer, they may have all sorts of things that they may not necessarily want to share in a public space, but what they will do is they'll use the app, and from a front of house point of view or reception staff point of view, if you're working in any situation, it provides that sort of underpinning support as a reception front of house member, but also it gives that confidence that you may not necessarily feel, because it's almost like it's hand holding a little, but in a really positive way.
Yeah, well, you're in charge as the disabled person. You dictate what you want and how you want it. And the lanyard is a fantastic bit of kit. And don't get me wrong, everything that's come before is incredibly useful, and it's part of a process. But the lanyard is really great for hidden disabilities. But 75% of disabled people have hidden disabilities. And of the 13.5 million disabled people in the UK, that is over 9 million people. Now, if we're saying to a staff member, if you see a lanyard, that person has a hidden disability, but it could be schizophrenia, and it could be hearing impairment, and it could be autism. And the person may not tell you.
They don't have to. Yeah.
And I just want you to do stuff for them without knowing any of that stuff. Whereas with Welcome, no, if the person wants you to know, then you will also get top tips and advice on how best to interact with me before I walk through your door.
We do so much development around, we do quite a lot of facilitation around developing people, whether that's behaviours or addressing their bias or helping them to create inclusive environments. And the one thing that we tend to come to is that fear factor. To your point, Becky, about building confidence, that fear factor is, so I don't want to ask too many questions because I don't want to offend. And then if I get it wrong,
what's going to happen?
Well, Scope had arrival anxiety, didn't they, as their campaign a couple of years ago? Hashtag arrival anxiety. Oh, sorry, no, end the awkward. Our hashtag is arrival anxiety. Theirs was end the awkward. So end the awkward was an amazing campaign, but it came along for a year and 2 years and then disappeared. And this stuff doesn't disappear.
Never.
You have to learn. We have to learn to speak even our native language. People teach us our native language. We observe it or we get taught it at schools. But if we don't get taught it, we don't learn it. We can't just expect that training stays. We have to keep reiterating it. The beautiful thing about Welcome is that if you train if one person who's using the app gets better service, and they are a person with a guide dog, say for instance, the next person with a guide dog who walks through the door is going to get better service whether they're using the app or not, because every single time somebody uses the app, it reinforces the training that somebody gets. So it's just this constant reinforcement of training, not just every 2 years or every 6 months or whatever.
I think as well, just to add to that, it's that whole thing that if somebody comes in, obviously with an assistant dog, immediately you'll start to think to yourself, right, where's the spending place? What do I need? Do they need some water and things like that? And that builds in an overall scale of knowledge and also interaction and collaboration with audiences, which that's for me is the key factor.
But
absolutely huge.
We also are guilty, because when we see a person with that assistance dog, we think water, spending area, sighted guide, not talking to the dog, introducing yourself potentially, but we don't think the person might also be an autistic person.
Oh, I completely agree. Oh, absolutely.
Or might have a hearing impairment. We don't think that. We go, wheelchair user, therefore I know not to touch the wheelchair. Then don't take all the other stuff into consideration. Now with Welcome, you can actually, or hopefully with other systems, because we can't do it all, you will say, I've got a couple of different conditions here, but I want you to take both into consideration when you meet.
Yeah. Such a great point. I mean, Becky, you and I have been banging the drum about intersectionality, but I think sometimes when we say intersectionality, people think we mean just protected characteristic with protected characteristic. So race and disability, or gender and race. I think what people also need to consider is that intersectionality between different disabilities, impairments, conditions, etc. Because we've had that conversation where people have said, oh no, I'm good. We've had training on hidden disabilities. And we go, oh, okay, brilliant.
Yeah, tick.
What was on it? What was on it? I learned about ADHD. Brilliant.
Oh.
So that's great. That's great. But do you know that chances are if somebody has ADHD, they're likely to have one or maybe two other conditions.
Profile. Yeah.
And it's having all those I'm not quite sure what the word is, those intersectional conversations when it comes to different conditions as well. So important.
Just think for a second. I wish there was a way of me. I wish there was some sort of gizmo here that would give me information about who's coming through the door. Well, we've got it. It's there. It exists.
Yeah. I literally was part of a project recently where somebody said to me, they said, right, we need to make sure that this is okay for people with autism. And I said, we need to also ensure that they may have crutches, they may be a wheelchair user, they may have some kind of visual impairment. So we need to not just look at one particular profile, but the range of neurodivergent profiles, but also in addition to any other particular needs that these guys need to have.
Mm-hmm.
What does the future look like for Neatebox?
Big.
Yeah.
The first couple of years really were education. We were just educating people that there was something else. It's a little bit like the first person who manned flight is a great example, or the first person who designed a car. They spent probably 5 or 10 years developing and redeveloping and creating and then educating everybody that something existed. Mm-hmm. In fact, there's quite a famous quote, which was, if I'd asked them what they'd have wanted, they'd have said faster horses. And that's true. You say to people, what do you need? Well, we need more of what we've got already, rather than, I wish somebody had invented flight. Nobody in 1875 or 1820 was saying, I need flight to get from A to B. They certainly weren't thinking about crossing the channel or anything like that. Anyway, so for Neatebox, we are the only company in the world doing proximity aware staff training. Literally, we're the only company in the world doing it. So the potential is ginormous. There are 600,000 businesses in the UK that could use this. 600,000 businesses that could install our stuff. There's no way we could cater for those if they said within 2 years we want all to be done. That would be really difficult. So the company needs to grow. We're employing, we've got 3 people in the company just now, but we're going to have 5 within the next couple of months. We're also #employ20. Employ 20 is that 20% of my company will always be people who are directly linked to disability or disabled themselves. So we want to reflect society in the makeup of the company. But America, South America, China, Africa, everywhere, Australia, Europe, nobody's got this. We want it to be everywhere. We want, the future. We're in talks with the council right now because our pedestrian crossing button press can also press buttons at doors. So if you walk up to a disability access door, you could open that door just by approaching the door. So no need to push the door or pull the door, or no need to press that button.
My brain now, honestly, if I could show you a picture of my brain. So Becky knows a bit. I'm a lot like Gavin now. My brain's going,
jaw up.
all these ideas, and I'm looking at my flip chart going, I've written some of this down already.
Well, we're going to turn disability access doors into universal access doors.
Good Lord. That's huge.
Isn't it, really?
I tell you what, though, with the current situation that we're in right now.
Would be amazing.
Wow. Oh, my goodness.
The amount of advice we're having to give around COVID and risk of transmission as well.
We had a lady using Welcome all the way through COVID lockdown, but she would go to Royal Bank of Scotland. And because she was using Welcome, this is a Royal Bank of Scotland in Haddington, she would walk to the bank, she would get into the queue. 2 minutes later, the manager would come out, take her out of the queue and take her into the bank. Because he knew that she was in the queue purely by her approaching the building.
Yeah.
So button presses at doors, at pedestrian crossings, at lifts in the future, who knows what we'll do with that. Welcome, the potential is that you would just walk into a coffee shop, take your seat, somebody would bring across your coffee and your cake to you, but you've already paid for it. So all you have to then do is leave at the end of that. The potential is that, I've got an Alexa over here. I could say, Alexa, I want to get my hair cut up to 3 o'clock next week at such and such a place. And just me doing that to my
I've just booked for you, Gavin.
Just by the fact that you've said that to your AI device in your house means that you've also trained the staff how to interact with you before you walk through the door.
Yeah. I mean, I
love it.
I love it. So for me, the future is certainly big and bright for Neatebox, and you know,
for the people we serve,
for the people you serve. And EMBED, we are all about collaborating and helping other organisations out there that are doing some fantastic stuff like yourselves to really reach more people. You know, if we can help in any way, large or small, that's exactly what we're going to do. And to coin a phrase, the wonderful Kate Nash always used to use this phrase when I started working with Kate a few years ago. So I'm gonna apologies, Kate, if you're gonna listen. I'm gonna steal your little phrase from this podcast. Your closing message for people would be 3 things. What would you want them to think? What would you want them to feel? What would you want them to do following this podcast?
Change your brain so that you're not a receiver of services, that you're a demander with a nice, happy, smiley face of services. But not that you need to demand from other people who will demand on your behalf, but demand them yourself. Within Welcome and indeed Button, Welcome by Neatebox and Button by Neatebox on the App Store, you can request venues. So we had one guy walk into House of Fraser, stood there for 5 minutes, walked out again. He was visually impaired. Nobody served him. He requested it. 3 months later, they installed it at House of Fraser. He demanded that they installed it. They went, wow, this is going to work. They now have amazing reviews. So be a part of the change you want to see. I would say that. Download the app, get involved, go on social media and talk to other people. I would also say that, and I can be critical as well, I would say that when somebody says to you, there's this amazing idea that helps disabled people, don't just think, yeah, but I wouldn't use that. Think about other disabled people. Think about, well, I couldn't use it or wouldn't want to use it, but Mrs. Smith up the road could use it. Yeah. But for too often, because disabled people are people, guess what? We think of things about how it's going to affect us, and we need to start thinking about how it affects all of us, because the only way that disabled people can be a power, and they should be, 13,274 billion pounds a year of spending power, is when we all think of each other. And I'm not disabled yet. I am already thinking about my disabled friends and people I haven't met yet who I consider my friends. And I'm thinking about, and indeed myself when I'm disabled, I'm thinking about them. So they should be thinking about me and other people as well. So that sounds uber critical, but we have to be a part of the solution. We can't just go on social media. This is my 3rd one. We can't just go on social media and go, somebody's made a complaint, I'm going to agree with that complaint. We have to look through all of the suggestions and complaints, and we have to look out for those jewels of knowledge that say, yeah, I know there's a complaint, but I saw a solution. And then share that and be positive. And don't go, yeah, my work here is done because I've just complained or I've just agreed with their complaint. Look for the solutions and actively promote those solutions. And yes, we are a solution, but there are some amazing people out there doing superb stuff. And I could list off hundreds of them, but I'll probably post them below or wherever it's going to be.
Down below, to the side, up above. Such really, really important words for us to close off with. And for people to get in touch, how should they get in touch with you?
Hello at Neatebox, hello at Neatebox, hello at Neatebox, or they can go to the website, which is neatebox.com, or they can follow me on Twitter at Neatebox or at Gavin Neate, or indeed LinkedIn, Gavin Neate. It's all pretty much the same. You can go to YouTube and you'll find all that stuff, put in anything to do with Gavin Neate or Neatebox, and you'll find so much stuff. You'll also find this, but then you wouldn't know about that because I've told you it's right at the very
It'll work out. Thank you so much for joining us. I must admit, my brain's gone into overdrive now with ideas, I've got to say. And we're going to continue to shine a spotlight as much as we can on Neatebox and all of the wonderful things that you're bringing.
You're both doing such massively important work, and people say to me, well done, Gavin, and they're another activist, and I say, no, we are all together in this as one. All of us can be out there promoting the very best that we see in this sector, because it's the only way it's going to work.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. For all of you listeners out there